Systems class. For your science lesson today, the learning objective is, can I recognise that living things can be grouped in a variety of ways? Okay, so last lesson, you were asked to explore your local area to identify living things. Now, you may have noticed that different living things live in a variety of habitats. So that means that living things don't just live in the one habitat, they live in different places. Now, if you're wondering what a habitat is, it is a place where a living thing lives. So which living things did you see last lesson when you were asked to go outside to explore your local area? What living things do you remember seeing? Can you remember the habitats in which you found them? So the places where you found them. How were the living things and the habitats similar? And how did they differ from one another? So maybe seeing a duck in a pond may have been very different to seeing maybe a squirrel up a tree. Have a little think about that for me. Can you remember the 7 life processes that all living things have to do in order to stay alive? You can pause this video and maybe quiz yourself really quickly by writing down as many life processes as you can remember, and then when you unpause, they will be shown on the screen for you to double check. So if we remember our mnemonic, that means our Mrs. Nerg, or as many of you know it, it could be Mrs. Gren as well. Those are the 7 life processes that we need in order to stay alive. So we have movement, we have respiration, sensitivity, nutrition, excretion, reproduction, and growth. So remember, all living things need to move in order to grow. Even if you're wondering, a tree is a living thing, how does it move? If you notice, it does move because as it's growing, it's showing movement as it is. And underneath the ground, the roots are moving as well. Respiration is breathing. So all living things need to breathe in order to stay alive. Sensitivity is how they can touch things. So if you're sensitive to something, that means that, for example, when the sun hits you, you feel a bit hot. Or when you feel like there's not enough sun or not enough heat, you get cold. So when you're sensitive, you feel things, and all living things feel things. Nutrition is eating, so all living things need to eat in order to stay alive. Excretion is when you get rid of your waste, and all living things have to do that, otherwise they feel very, very poorly, and maybe you could even end up dying. And the living thing could also end up no longer staying alive. Reproduction is when you have babies and you make little versions of yourself. So for example, a dog reproduces puppies, plants reproduce little plantlings, cats produce kittens, ducks produce ducklings. So all living things need to reproduce in order to stay alive. If nobody reproduced, then there wouldn't be any new versions of living things. So they would no longer exist. And lastly, we have growth. So all living things need to grow in order to stay alive. Now, use the posters that you designed last lesson as a reminder of these life processes. So today we are going to be sorting different living things. So you can see a picture here already of the types of animals that you can sort and organize depending on what they look like, depending on what they eat, but we'll go through that later on. Now, there are about 8.9 million different types of living thing on Earth, and somehow they have all managed to be named. Now, can you write that number in words for me? Pause this video and have a go. How do you write 8.9 million in words? I look forward to seeing your writing. Now, which species do you think humans are the most similar to? Pause this video and have a think to yourself. Think of all the living things that are on Earth. Which one is most similar to us humans? Oh, there's a spoiler there. There's a little clue there as to which species I am talking about. So let's see if you got it correct. The answer is chimps. So in fact, around 98% of chimp genes, that means the tiny parts in all of your cells which give you certain characteristics, so they can tell you what the colour of your eyes are going to be, and that is then passed on to the next generation. So if you're wondering, my mum has blue eyes and I have blue eyes, it's because she's passed on that gene to you. So Scientists have found that about 98% of these chimp genes are the same as human genes, but there are obvious differences in appearance and colour. Human and chimps might share a lot of the same genes, but we do have differences between one another. So can you think of some differences? When you think about it, and when you really study pictures of chimps and pictures of humans, I think you will find and agree with me that chimps are definitely more hairy. They have a differently shaped jaw. So here, their jaw is a little bit different. And they also have a differently shaped nose. They move around on all four limbs. So that means that they're not walking just on the two legs like we walk on. They walk on all fours. They use their arms as well. Their arms are longer and their legs are shorter. So those are some of the differences. Even though chimps and humans are supposed to be the most similar to one another when it comes to a living thing, there are also some differences there that make chimps and humans different from one another. Now, sorting this large number of species into groups based on similarities helps people to know which living thing is being talked about. Scientists can be sure that they are investigating the same species. Two very large groups of living things are animals and plants. So 2 ways of separating living things is by animal and by plant. Now, we are part of the animal kingdom. These groups are, however, still too big. So about 7.8 million animal species are in this one group. So they have to be subdivided. That means they have to be divided again. They have to be put into another set of groups. And the 2 sets of groups that animals are split into are vertebrates and invertebrates. So can you explain what these words mean? Pause the video, have a little think about what you think is meant by a vertebrate and an invertebrate. And when you unpause, you will see the answer. So invertebrates have no backbone. That means that they have no spine, and vertebrates do. So based on that, do you think humans are invertebrates, or do you think that we are vertebrates? I wonder what you are thinking. Now, there are far more invertebrates than vertebrates. So that means there are far more living things that have no backbone than there are who do have a backbone. Now, some are very simple, but others are more complex, like insects, spiders, or we call them arachnids sometimes as well. That's the more scientific word. And also mollusks, which have a bit of a shell to them. Can you think of a living thing with a shell? So you have this little lizard asking themselves, am I a reptile or an amphibian? What I would like for you to do is watch this video now. There's a link on the screen for you. Watch this clip about animal classification, just to understand what we really mean when we say grouping animals and sorting them out. So have a look, pause this video, put the BBC clip on, and then once you've finished watching that, return back to this video. So vertebrates are split again into fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So the vertebrates are the living things with a backbone. They have a spine, and they are then grouped again into 5 different groups. So fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So plants can also be grouped into 2 different groups. You have the flowering plants and the non-flowering plants. So flowering plants grow flowers and they use seeds to reproduce or to make more plants like them. So the key is in the actual word, it's in the name of the plant, a flowering plant. It's going to produce flowers. You have the non-flowering plants, on the other hand, who do not grow flowers. So they use seeds or spores. Now, a spore is a very tiny part of a plant that can be used to reproduce and create more of them. So yes, that's how non-flowering plants are created. And obviously, as the name suggests, a non-flowering plant does not produce flowers. Now, a branching database then, key word here. So scientists like to use a classification key to sort the millions of species of living things into groups, and they name them. So scientists use better classification keys, which are a list of clues and answers for identifying an organism, finding out which species it is. So there are 2 ways that scientists use a key in order to sort animals out, in order to make it a lot more clear for us which animals are invertebrates, which are vertebrates, which are fish, which are reptiles, which are mammals. So as I mentioned, a branching database is a key for unlocking the identification of a living thing or other object. Now compare this to the use of the word key on a map. When you're using a map, you'll often find that you have a key at the bottom or at the top of the map showing you or telling you what what different colors mean. So for example, the blue color symbolizes the sea. You could have a dark green color, which symbolizes like the foresty areas of a place. You could have gray, which symbolizes, you know, ponds. So just like a key in a map, just like the key on a map tells you what something is, these keys in science are used to also tell you what different animals are. Now, new species are still being discovered, especially in more remote places, like the deepest parts of the oceans or in thick rainforest. Recent finds include a new jellyfish off the Italian coast. You have a new type of praying mantis, which is an insect. They found that in Rwanda. And you also have some new dancing frogs in India. Now, try it yourself. I'd like for you to use Google and find more recent discoveries. Now, when scientists find a species, they try to classify it by observing some of its features. They try to see if it lives on land or on water. Does it lay eggs or not? And is the skin wet or is it dry? So these sorts of questions are asked by scientists in order to then think where they would put the animal, which group they would put the animal in. So the following slide will show you an example of a branching database for mini beasts. So here you have it. You have a branching database. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 insects are being used here. They are being sorted here. You have the spider, the woodlouse, snail, ladybird, earthworm, and earwig. So you have to start from the beginning of the classification key. So for example, it says here, you answer the questions, follow the lines, and soon enough you should find out the name of the insect you were thinking of. So let's say if we want to find out what a spider, let's have a think, let's answer the questions. I'm going to answer the questions and then we'll see what animal we come out with. So for example, does it have legs? I'm going to think, no, let me think, I want to find an insect that doesn't have legs. Does it have antennae? Yes. So I'm looking for an insect that doesn't have legs and that does have antennae. So that should be then a snail. Let's try again. If you're looking for an insect that does have legs, you follow the yes line. Does it have 6 legs? No, I'm not looking for an insect that has 6 legs. Is its body in 2 main parts? No, I want it to be in 1 part. So if you follow the no, then the answer is woodlouse. So a woodlouse is the insect that has legs, it doesn't have 6 legs, and its body is in 1 part. So that's how you use a classification key. It tells you different parts of an insect, and then it tells you what the name of it is as well. Now, obviously, you can do this with other living things, but this is just an example with insects, or mini beasts as they're called here. Now, the next slide shows another way of classifying living things. So here, you're asking questions rather than following lines. Well, it's the same as the first classification key in that you're asking questions, but it doesn't have the lines. It doesn't look the same. So for example, we go to number 1, does it have legs? If you answer the word yes, you're looking for your insect to have legs, then you go to question 2. However, if you choose not to go for it, not to look for an insect that has legs, then you go to question 3. So it tells you which question to go to. And then the more you answer, you should start getting your answers. So it says here, no, it is an earthworm. Yes, it is an earwig, or no, it is a ladybird, or yes, it is a spider, no, it is a woodlouse. So you work through the questions and then you find out your insect through that method as well. Now then, time for your 3 tasks. Task number 1, you're going to explain each life process and give an example. So for example, if I was to talk about the life process of reproduction, I would write down all living things reproduce. A dog reproduces by giving birth to puppies. So I've given a definition of the life process, and I've also given an example of that life process as well. So you're going to be writing that down and then uploading that onto Tapestry. Task number 2, you're going to venture outside, go outside into your local area, and you're going to create a list of local habitats in your area. So you should have already done this with Living Things last lesson. You're going to take pictures and you're going to take videos. Once you have done that, task 3 is to create your very own branching database for the living things that you have seen in your local area. I will show you again, just to remind you, there are 2 different ones you can do. You have this sort of branching database. So you can pause this to have a quick look at the questions that are being asked. Remember, you're looking at the way living things look. You use them to ask questions then, and then you can start sorting out your different living things. Now here they've used 6 different living things. You could do maybe 4 living things to start off with, and then if you have more, then you can add more. And if that is a little bit too tricky, then you can use this method of sorting out your living things. Once you have done all 3 tasks, make sure to use a ruler if you are doing the first branching database with the lines coming out, just to make sure that it is as neat as possible. And once you have finished that, you are going to upload it onto Tapestry for me to see. Now that's all from me for your science lesson for today, Williams class. Take care, enjoy, learn more about the living things that are around you, and I look forward to seeing what you find. Bye.